In this episode of the Omega Podcast, we have a trailblazing serial entrepreneur, Andrew McConnell, co-founder and CEO, of a lively discussion with our founder on health and well-being, taking calculated risks, overcoming obstacles, and being alive. Let's accelerate into this conversation.
Welcome to the Omega Podcast with Andrew McConnell, founder and CEO of alively.com. and the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of Get Out of My Head, Creating Modern Clarity with Stoic Wisdom. Prior to this most recent endeavor, Andrew was the founder and CEO of Rented.com, Vacation Futures Incorporated, and Rented Capital LLC, as well as a management consultant at a global consulting company. Andrew received his AB in history from Harvard University and his JD from Harvard Law School and his LLM from the University of Cambridge Trinity Hall. Andrew, it is an honor to have you on the Omega Podcast.
It's great to be here with you, Keenan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I think based upon our brief introduction of you, you have accomplished so much throughout your career. And for many of our listeners, they probably want to unlock your passion. What ignites your bones to be able to do so many incredible things, start so many different ventures? What prompted you to, one, start a business, but to start so many incredible organizations?
Yeah, I think the idea to start a business was something I had even when I was young, right? A lot of times we'd play games and play pretend, and I'd be a business person, right? Like it was starting businesses and running the math. I'd have a business idea, some that I still think are good ideas, but I'd run the math and say, okay, well, here's what I think the top line revenue could get to. Here's the discount rate for how likely it is to get there. Here's the opportunity cost. Here's how much it's going to cost me to actually invest and go build this. The math doesn't make a ton of sense, right? For the risk I'd be taking on. It would need to be higher. And then when I had the idea for Vacation Futures, I ended up spending 10 months really validating the market, validating the idea, pulling people in and saying, okay, now this could be a really, really big one. And so that's why I did the first company. And then the second company was saying, okay, well, we hit a plateau on this. What is it that I'm not understanding about this market? And it was a frontline salesperson said, well, what if we tried it this other way? I said, I don't know. Let's go test it. And we did. And it was a money machine. It's like, great, let's go start a new company and go do that. And then again, we kind of were plateauing there. And someone else on the team said, hey, what I've seen in another company I worked at, we did this and it really helped. And we did it. And it was another money machine. So it's like, great, let's go start a new company and do that. And then kind of had spent that whole time in one industry, in vacation rentals, in the Airbnb space, travel. And around the same time, I ended up selling my latest company there, Rented. In 2022, I published Get Out of My Head. There was just a lot of stuff I was working through myself. When COVID hit, everybody was working through some stuff. And so it was me. We used to use this line in my company is that we help you make the most of your most valuable asset. And then I started looking around me during COVID and I said, whoa, okay, actually our most valuable asset is nothing physical. It's not this house we live in. It's our mind. It's the one we're born with. We don't need to go build equity we're born with it. And yet this we're all wasting. We're all living as tenants. We just give it away to social media, to the news cycle, to what our boss might say next week, what the client might say next week. And we just rent the pieces back after we've given it away. Why is that? So that was the premise of the book and the journey there. And after I published it, I started getting all these emails and LinkedIn messages and tweets of, wow, you changed my life. Wow. How did you know that this is what I was going through? You've gotten completely into my head, right? They'd kind of play on the title. I said, wow, maybe my next thing I could do something more than price vacation homes. I could go do something that really helps a lot of people. And I had I've gone through my personal values and my personal mission statement. Jim Lohr has this, what's it called? The personal credo journal that you develop your own personal mission statement and vision. And mine was continuous growth and learning in the pursuit of sharing that to the benefit of others. And what I spend a lot of my time on is around health, right? It's something I take very, very seriously. My nutrition, my fitness, my sleep. And I get questions about it all the time. And so when I was looking at what to do next, my co-founder reached out. He was thinking about very similar things. Said, hey, maybe we can go do something here together. And so the idea to be able to go add billions of healthy years to people's lives, I couldn't imagine a more compelling calling. And it's a way to tie the learning I would do in my free time anyway to my mission of sharing that to the benefit of others by building a business around it that helps benefit others. So yeah, that's how we got to Alively.
That's fantastic. And I just really appreciate you just being so inundated with the process of getting to each and every single stage with your different business ventures. I think for many entrepreneurs, they're focused on the revenue, the profit, getting to a particular status. Why do you think it's so important for an entrepreneur to focus more on the process than it is to get to the destination?
Well, so one is we share a single destination, and that's death. And is that something we really want to race as quickly as possible too? I don't think so. Life literally is the entire journey between the starting point, which is birth, and the ending point, the destination, which is death. And so the process is what our life is. I'm not going to pretend that I knew this in my teens or 20s or even 30s, right? It's something I came to later in my 30s of, as I was building companies, once you exit, you can go do this and live this kind of life, live this, and realizing tomorrow is not guaranteed. There's a non-0% chance every single day we wake up is our last. It's higher risk for others and depending activities, how old you are, et cetera. But there's a non-0% chance every single day, whether it's hit by a bus, anything happens. So why delay living that life you want? One. Two, so many people, and you see it when you go to a smaller stage of it, but so many people think they're running to something, but they don't really define what it is about that something that they're running to, and they're wrong. So you get this example of, I was running to get this dollar amount, and then they have that amount in the bank and they realize, I don't feel any different. Everything that was a gaping hole in my life still feels like a gaping hole. Jim Carrey has this quote, I'm going to butcher it, but I just wish everybody could get the opportunity to be rich and famous to realize that it's not the answer. It's not going to solve your problems. And so thinking through on the front end, what is it you're actually running to? I'm running to retirement. Okay, what is it about retirement? Well, I want more control over my calendar. Okay, if that's really what it is, then how can you test that that's true? By trying to take more control over your calendar today, right? And just trying to get to not the destination, but what is it about the destination you like or think you like, and start crafting that today. Because you could be wrong, and it'd be way better to find out you're wrong decades ahead of time before you set yourself on a path, or you find out you're right and you don't have to wait decades. You're like, I was right. I love this. And let me start doing it now. I didn't need to wait. It was similar with writing, right? I thought, hey, once I do these entrepreneurial ventures and get to that, then I'll go be a writer. And then realize, wait, a writer is just someone who writes. Maybe I just start writing. And so for years, I wrote for Forbes, not published anywhere. I wrote 3 different screenplays. I wrote a bunch of children's books. I just wrote because I was like, hey, a writer is just someone who writes. And then a published writer is someone who publishes what they write. So then I got an agent and then published a book. But I didn't have to wait for something else. It was saying, hey, what is it that I want about this? And it wasn't being out of work and being a writer. It was, hey, I want to write. Oh, okay. Well, let me carve out the time to go do that. And I think that's why it's, for those 2 reasons, really important to focus on the process. One, because that ultimate destination is death. We don't know how close or far we are from that. So don't delay it. Make the process what you care about. 2, you could be wrong about the destination you want to get to. So the more you can make it about the process earlier on, the sooner you can learn that to course correct along the way.
Very well said. And it really makes a lot of individuals, startup ventures, really prioritize what's important. And I really appreciate you not going off the line of, revenue, profit, status. It's more about, we all have an end goal, which is death. And the process of getting there, we should never expedite, but it's meant to be enjoyed. So how are you going to live every single day enjoying what you love to do? Because again, tomorrow is not guaranteed. We don't have all the resources or maybe all the time in the world to do all the things that we would love to do. No matter how much money you have or how much time you think you have, we're not guaranteed. But it brings back the idea that we have to have a vision for our life. And what we do with that vision will ultimately determine the course of our day-to-day life. And if we're not focused on that, we'll lose and waste time on things that are not going to be beneficial to us or beneficial to the overall vision we have for our life. And I just think that's so crucial and so critical. But just to make sure that for an entrepreneur that's hearing this conversation, he might say, I have a company, it's worth over $5 million. We're close to an exit. I want to just travel the world, whatever their goal is, but then they're losing an aspect of their self in that pursuit. What particular advice, or maybe from a mentor throughout your career trajectory, that has kind of helped you align to really being true to who you are, that you can perhaps share to that individual?
And when you say they're losing themselves to that pursuit, you're saying they're just working too much on it, or hours, or what do you mean?
Their identity is tied to what they do.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay. Because I think there are potentially two questions in there. So tying your identity to the thing you do is incredibly dangerous. And I've done that multiple times in my life. And eventually all of it comes to an end. And so, I was a competitive athlete on the national team, and I got injured. And even though I was still an athlete, I wasn't competing at the same level. So there's this huge identity crisis and go into depression. And then fortunately I was in school. And so I could latch onto this new identity. I'm going to be a really good student, right? So be a really good student, get to law school, do all that. Then coming out of that, okay, I'll go be a consultant, right? I wear the uniform, the blue shirt, the dark gray slacks, my to-me bag that I hop on the plane on Monday and back on Thursday, right? And each time just kind of fitting in to a stereotyped identity. Here's what an athlete is. Here's what a student is. And it took me a long time to say, those are clothes you can take on or put off, and they all come to an end at one point. And it's kind of lazy defining myself by someone else's definition of a stereotype or a caricature versus saying, hey, these are a bunch of different things that I do, right? I swim still. I write still. I build companies. I'm a friend of people. I'm a father. I do all these things. Not one of them defines me. It's not a label that's a defining element. These are pieces of me at this time. And by the way, that changes with time. There was a time I wasn't a father. Now, for the rest of my life, I should be one. But I'm CEO of this company, and then I sell it. And no, I'm running this division of this separate company because I sold it, and it looks different. Not tying your identity to that. And maybe it helped because I published the book the same year as selling the company. So I was diversifying what my identity was to myself. But as we were coming close to that, the last year or two, looking at what that exit would look like, and I've seen myself, what will that mean if I'm not? And for me, it was one of those things of, wait, okay, I'm selling, not buying. So there's a reason for that. There's probably a lot I can learn from these people who are buying because they've done something I haven't done about how you build your business, how you're scaling your business. These are things that I can take with me and go in not as a death of the company in the sale, but as this opportunity of, wow, I get to this chance to go learn, which is the greatest thing I think you can do, that level of curiosity and learning. And so I think the mindset's a really big piece of it. The other side is people say, oh, it was like my baby, right? Like I raised it from scratch. Like, I don't know. I have an 8-year-old child. A company is definitionally a capitalist endeavor. That is not a child. I have a child, and a human being, is a very different thing than a company. And while I care about every single person I hire deeply, their life continues to go on. As I told everybody at every stage of the company, it's like, look, we're all going to have a last day here. Whether we die while we're still working here, or the company gets sold, or we go move on, we'll have a last day. All we can do is work with integrity and respect with each other every day that we are here together. And I guess both come down to mindset, which maybe is not that surprising given what I write about. But I do think the mindset's foundational because the facts are what the facts are. And then we get to decide if we put labels on it and what labels we want to put on it. Hamlet said, there's neither good nor bad, but our thinking makes it so. We put the labels on the facts.
Right. I think for many, it's just so important that we look at the holistic approach to living with a clear mind, as your book mentions, but also having a clear focus. And at Omega Consulting, we actually have 3 pillars. We call it the mind, body, and soul. And I believe that you are a great advocate for digital health, but also being self-aware about one's body. Can you speak to why it's so important for individuals, not just entrepreneurs, but just your everyday, 9-to-5 person who's just trying to make ends meet, that they should begin to prioritize their body and their health? Why do you think that plays a significant role in their success overall in all aspects of their life?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk ad nauseum on this. Arthur Schopenhauer talked about how without our health, nothing of value has any value. Because you sacrifice your sleep, your health, all this to accumulate degrees or titles or promotions or money. And then once you lose your health, you would give everything, all of that and more just to get your health back. So it is the biggest fool's bargain there is to trade, because that is the thing that anyone with any of those things would trade in a heartbeat. When you don't have your health, you want that back. There's a separate piece of, even in the pursuit to get all those things, you need your health, right? You're going to be more effective. So you think, hey, if I work 20 hours, I'm going to get this done. Well, actually, if you slept well each night and you had the energy you would with proper sleep, proper nutrition, proper movement of your body, you would accomplish more in 8 hours than you did in that 20. There's good science behind all of this. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm different. But we're not. We're all human beings. We all share absurd % of DNA, right? The core metrics, we are the same in these respects. And the separation of mental, physical, spiritual, I think we're learning more and more. There's not a separation. Mental health is physical health. Spiritual health is physical health. So you can do everything right on fitness, nutrition, your sleep. If you feel socially isolated, you don't have that spiritual connection through faith or some broader purpose or some bigger community, we know with all those other things, you still have a higher risk of getting early onset dementia, of an early cardiovascular event. You have to have that spiritual component. And that's a real danger. Look, I don't go to church. I find my purpose and stuff elsewhere, but there were generations that the church was the soul of the community, or these civic groups, Kiwanis and Lions and all that. And we've lost a lot of that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're in a loneliness epidemic at the same time that's happening. We're losing that connection. And it is a bad trade-off because we don't understand. Most people do not understand the impact it's having on their physical and mental health. Now, same on the mental, right? Mental versus physical. Then again, you're going to have more stress in your life. They all tie together. And if you want to be mentally sharp, you don't take a Formula One car and put trash fuel in it. You put really good fuel. So you need to think about your nutrition. You don't leave it sitting for several years and then expect it to go run in Monte Carlo and win the race, right? No, they have to practice. They have to train. You have to take care of it. It's the same with our bodies and our minds. We have to put the work in, and it's physical health. We don't go to the gym for a year and be like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to move anymore. And it's the same with our mental health. The stuff that we need to do, the practices to invest in our mental health, to work on that stress management, it's daily, just like daily good nutrition, just like daily good movement of our body. All of that requires work, and all of it is worth it because your life is that much more rewarding, more full of vitality when you do. And you don't realize it. It seems like a chore until you start doing it. Oh my God, I can't believe how I felt before I started doing this. And now I feel absolutely amazing.
Are you interested in getting a copy of Andrew's book? You can pick up a copy by purchasing on Amazon at Get Out of My Head, Creating Modern Clarity with Stoic Wisdom. Kindle edition. There are additional resources in the bio section of this episode. Now let's get back to this turbo-boosted conversation.
I think that's so important because if we're not focused on our physical well-being, if we're not focused on working out and just having that regimen, I think there's an aspect of our productivity, our ability to think clearly that's lost because, as you mentioned, we're kind of muddling our mind with just bad food habits, bad disciplines that will in turn affect our productivity and also the outcomes and what we do in our day-to-day operations. But just to kind of take it a step back, because I think when people hear you, Andrew, you're a world-renowned speaker. You recently spoke at TEDx and you're also an author. I think many people will get the idea that you just got here, right out of the womb. And I think it's so important that people understand that throughout your career, you had sponsors, you had advocates, you had mentors. Can you sort of speak to why it's important that for young entrepreneurs or maybe entrepreneurs that have been in the realm for 40 plus years, the importance of having a mentor or an advocate along the journey?
Yeah. I mean, it gives us back a little bit to that Barack Obama comment on, you wouldn't build your company, but the roads, the sewer, all that, you didn't build that, right? We all are building on the backs of those that came before us and those supporting us. And it's a community one way or the other, right? When I just gave the idea, hey, here are my last 3 companies. So the first one, that was my idea. I was sitting down, having lunch with family friends, came up with this idea, immediately brought a co-founder in and we built it together. But those next 3 companies, including the one I have now, those ideas came from other people. One was frontline sales guy. One was the other. And so mentors don't have to be people decades ahead of you in anything. You can learn so much from anyone because they have entirely different life experiences than you and views on things as a result. And so when I am most fed up with myself and like myself the least is a little bit when I'm in a conversation like this where I'm doing an inordinate amount of the talking. When I like myself and enjoy myself the most is when I shut up and just ask questions and just get to learn. And that's a far more rewarding life. So I've had incredible mentors. Joel Babbitt out of Atlanta has been fantastic to me. Carl Shepard in the vacation rental space. But I don't even know if most people realize that they were mentors. I was emailing a message, Rich Roll, the day on the podcast. I was like, hey, you probably don't even know this, but as a Division I swimmer like you, as someone who used to be an attorney like you, as someone who eats plant-based, as someone launching a podcast, like you've been a real virtual mentor to me. Tim Ferriss, right? Not somebody I've ever spoken to, but is another virtual mentor. I learned so much from him. And the mentors don't even have to be alive, right? Like you read great biographies and the lessons you take are mentoring for you. And so I think we can redefine what a mentor needs to look like to make them more accessible, 1. And then 2, be more proactive in asking in a much lighter weight way. So if you say, hey, I want you to be my mentor. I need you to spend 5 hours a month with me. Who signs up for that? Like who has the time? That's okay. Sorry. I'm not going to be able to do that. If you just come to someone and say, hey, I really respect what you've built here, what you've done. Would you mind if every now and then I just sent you an email with some questions, and just make sure when you do it, they're questions you couldn't just Google or get the answer from some interview they did before. They're really worth their time in answering. And most people will take the time to do that. They say, okay, look, I can do that asynchronously. So you're not going to eat up my day. I'll do it around my time as long as you don't have really tight time expectations. And okay, I will carve out the time because I want to pay it for it. I want to help you out. Now I've had both sides. I've had people come and say, okay, I want you to mentor me. And what they really wanted was me to buy their company or something and then get mad if I don't no, that's not a mentor relationship. Just, you can't get mad because I'm not giving you exactly what you want. I can advise you of, hey, I don't think this company is sellable right now. I think you need to do work on X, Y, and Z. I can't do that work for you.
Yeah, definitely. You have to put the feet to the gas pedal to be able to find someone that's going to be able to be with you those steps throughout the journey, because I think it's important to have advisors, right? Someone that you can be able to be counseled or to counsel someone else throughout their trajectory, because there are things that you can learn from them that you may not have to experience throughout your endeavors that makes the journey, I believe, much smoother and much more, focused than just kind of doing it, by yourself without any specific guidance. But I always ask people, and I tend to ask this question in all of my conversations, because I think it's funny how, fast forward to where we are now to back to when we first started, what advice would you give your younger self? Because for me, that particular question asked me the pain point of what do I wish I knew now that I used to know or not know then, right? So I have to ask you that same question, Andrew, because, you've accomplished so much throughout your career and throughout your trajectory, and you have so much more that I'm so excited to see and to watch and to also support throughout your endeavors. But what advice would you give your younger self? You mentioned you had a daughter as well. So if your daughter would say, hey, Dad, I'm going to start a business tomorrow, what advice would you give me? What type of thoughts come to mind?
This was advice a mentor who was an employee of mine. He was a direct report, but he was a personal mentor to me. Gave me right when my daughter was born, just before she was born. And it may be surprising or not, given what we just talked about the process versus the destination. But I have this tendency, especially when I was younger, it was all about the next destination. It was the next milestone, right? Every single thing I did was preparing for the next milestone. And as a result, I was never enjoying the process and the day I was living in. And so this mentor, he said, look, when your daughter's born, I know you're going to have this tendency to look ahead. Once she's 1 and once she's 5 and once she's 10, don't do it. Just be there, because you're not getting that time back. Just be there. And it's 100% true with parenthood. That is the only time that thing, but it's also 100% true with every single second of our lives. The future and the past are literally only figments of our imagination. The only time we ever live in is now. It's the present moment is the only thing we ever get. And the Japanese have this term, phrase, ichigo ichige, about once in a lifetime. And it's every single moment. So every time you see a friend, every time you do a tea ceremony, maybe you do 100 tea ceremonies in your life, but this is the only one of this one in your entire life. And so if I was giving myself that advice to say, hey, look, know the goals. Don't just ignore goals, but in pursuit of them, don't daydream about that end state all the time. Spend 90% plus in the moment. Just experience it. Even when it's painful, especially when it's painful. Remember what this feels like. Remember what this is like. I remember one time when I was injured and I could not get my arms above my head. I was in excruciating pain. And I sat with it, and I was 19 years old. Sat with it and said, remember this moment. Cause I know, this is a conversation in my head. I know you're going to tell yourself, it wasn't that bad. I could have gotten over. I could have done this. Just remember how much this hurts right now. Cause you can't. You're a tough guy. You can't. You're not getting over this right now. And so it's not just being there for the good moments. It's being there for all of the moments, because your life is all of the moments and you have to be there for it. Otherwise, who's living your life?
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I am just literally so just amazed. And I think it's so important that for anyone listening to our podcast, which will be many of you, that, Andrew is a very special person. And just by this conversation, I'm just so enlightened and just so inspired by your journey throughout life and all that you've been able to accomplish. But, with all that you have done, I have to ask, what would be next for you?
I do. If we could pause on that, all I've done, because I have this conversation with people and then get intimidated with stuff of reminding them, if they wouldn't put their life, especially if you're my age, one, I'm older, so I've had more time to do stuff. But if anybody can put their life in 5 bullets, it's going to seem so impressive. It's just when you read someone else's 5 bullets, you think everything in their life is like that. Whereas I know about my life. Yeah, I know those 5 bullets, but I know everything else too. And so you're on the same trajectory. You're all doing great things. Like, don't get intimidated or confused or deluded by the bullets on somebody's CV or resume. These are some of the lessons. I did these 40 lessons when I turned 40. One, your resume really should not matter to you. Like, in your 40s, where you went to college, why should that matter to you? Like, get over that. The second, though, is your resume really matters to other people. So thinking about what those bullets are for you to be able to share, like, hey, because people are going to make assessments on it, thinking about it. So sorry, I went on a big tangent there. But what's next for me is continuing. I go through annually, what are my personal values? And for the past 5-6 years, they've been the same ordering, and my personal mission statement. And it's been consistent. And my co-founder, we did them independently and compared, and they're very, very similar. And it's that continuous growth and improvement and learning in the service of putting that learning to the benefit of others. And so I want to keep doing that. I do that with my writing. I have a weekly blog. I'll do that hopefully with my daughter, go to my daughter's school, read there. I volunteer at lunches, do that kind of stuff. And then, honestly, with health, when I was thinking about what was going to happen after Rented, I was like, education is something I care a bunch about, and serve on some nonprofit boards, do a lot of work there. Do I go into ed tech? Do I do something to scale that? Or, hey, climate is a big, big issue right now. Like, do I go in to do that? And what I realized is there are incredibly smart minds and brilliant people that know a ton about each of those. And if I could be doing something to unlock greater capabilities in all those people through the mental, physical, spiritual health, really the health span, give more healthy years to them and everybody else, then that's this multiplier effect that helps all of society, helps everybody, because those people can be better versions of themselves. And so what's next for me is that continuous journey of trying to serve others and help them be the best versions of themselves. And at the same time, try to work to be the best version of myself. I got a lot of work to do too.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for being on the Omega podcast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.